The Great Depression was the worst economic downturn in modern history. Millions lost jobs, savings vanished, and families struggled just to eat. With little money, people relied on home gardens, foraging, and cheap, filling foods to survive. Many of these meals were simple, hearty, and sometimes unusual by today's standards. The 1930s were a time of extreme hardship, and families had to get creative to put food on the table. Many of these forgotten foods might surprise you. Some even made a comeback during recent tough times. So, let's explore these Depression-era staples and the stories behind them. 1. Potato soup. Nowadays, potato soup can get quite fancy. Add creme fraiche, cauliflower, or fresh herbs, and blend in leeks to elevate the flavors. But don't forget that the humble potato remains the main ingredient.
One thing, it's soup season, and one of my favorite soups of all time is loaded potato soup.
And that was crucial for preparing food during the Great Depression. Potatoes were a staple of many meals at this time, but adding them to soup was one of the most popular methods of preparation. Potatoes are hearty and filling, but they're not precious. They're cheap to grow and don't require as much attention as other crops. You can pile a bunch of them in a basket and store them during the off-season. All you needed to do back then to make your potato soup stretch was cook them in some water, butter, and milk. Depending on what other ingredients you had around the house, maybe some onions, you could add that as well. The potato salad was a hearty, nutritious meal, just like the next item on our list. 2. Poke salad. During the Great Depression, poke salad, made from the young leaves of the toxic pokeweed plant, became a survival food in the American South, particularly in Appalachia, as people turned to foraging for sustenance. Pokeweed, while poisonous in mature forms, was eaten by people in the South during the Great Depression and before, as a way to supplement their diet, especially during the spring when other greens were scarce. The leaves of young pokeweed plants were boiled twice to remove toxins before being sautéed, often with bacon grease, creating a dish similar to spinach or mustard greens. While not as common as it once was, poke salad still holds a place in Southern cuisine and is a reminder of a time when people had to be resourceful to survive. The poke salad was a foraged meal that was used for sustenance during hard times, like the next item on our list. 3. Salsify. When grocery money vanished during the Great Depression, resourceful cooks turned to salsify, a wild-growing root nicknamed the oyster plant for its briny, seafood-like flavor when cooked. This hardy member of the dandelion family required no store-bought seeds or fertilizer. It thrived in weedy fields and could be cultivated in even the poorest garden plots. The root is similar in appearance to a long, thin parsnip, with creamy white flesh and a thick skin. In the same way as many root vegetables, salsify can be boiled, mashed, or used in soups and stews. It was a staple meal during the Great Depression era because it was foraged and can be grown in your garden, and the same can be said for the next item on the list. What made salsify special was its versatility. The young shoots could be eaten like asparagus, the flowers made a beautiful garnish, and the roots stored well in root cellars. It's a perfect example of how Depression-era cooks maximized every part of their plants. If salsify wasn't your thing, then the next item on our list is a sweet dish that will definitely be your thing. 4. Potato candy. During the bleak years of the Great Depression, when store-bought sweets were a luxury, thrifty homemakers invented potato candy, a clever, nearly no-cost treat that turned humble ingredients into something special. Though its roots trace back to German frugal cooking, Americans put their own twist on it by rolling the sweet potato dough around peanut butter, creating a playful pinwheel effect when sliced. The recipe was astonishingly simple. Just one boiled potato, mashed and mixed with heaps of powdered sugar, often bought in bulk to save money, a splash of milk, vanilla, and a pinch of salt. The sticky dough was rolled thin, smeared with peanut butter, then rolled up, chilled, and sliced into little spirals of sweetness. Without butter, eggs, or expensive chocolate, it was a miracle of necessity, proving even in hard times, people could still make something delightful. Today, potato candy survives as a nostalgic Depression-era hack, a testament to the creativity born from scarcity. Some families still make it, not just for its quirky charm, but as an edible reminder of how sweetness can be found even when resources are thin. The next item on the list was, and is still seen as, an unconventional meal. 5. Peanut butter stuffed onion. During the Great Depression, when hunger loomed and creative meal solutions were essential, the U.S. Bureau of Home Economics devised an unusual but practical dish: peanut butter stuffed onions. This peculiar recipe wasn't about gourmet flavor, it was about survival and nutrition. Government pamphlets and newspaper ads promoted it as a filling, budget-friendly meal that delivered protein from peanut butter and vitamins from onions, all while stretching scarce ingredients. To make it, homemakers would hollow out an onion, pack the center with peanut butter, sometimes thinned with milk or vinegar to make it spreadable, and roast it until soft. The result? a hot, savory sweet dish that, while not exactly delicious, kept families fed. Some versions added breadcrumbs or a sprinkle of salt to improve the taste, but the goal was always to function over flavor. Today, the idea of peanut butter stuffed onions might sound bizarre, but in the 1930s, it was a symbol of ingenuity in the face of scarcity. Like many Depression-era foods, it reminds us that necessity doesn't just breed invention, it sometimes breeds unforgettable, if questionable, culinary experiments. The next item on the list is a cheap meal that is nutrient-packed, which made it a great meal during the Great Depression. 6. Prune pudding. During the bleak years of the Great Depression, prunes emerged as an unlikely hero in American pantries. Cheap, shelf-stable, and packed with fiber, vitamins, and natural sweetness, they became a nutritional lifeline for families stretching every penny. Their versatility sparked creativity in Depression-era kitchens, where thrifty cooks transformed them into prune pudding, a simple, spiced dessert that required little more than prunes, sugar, and cinnamon, or whatever spices were on hand. But prunes got their most famous endorsement from none other than First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, who served her homemade prune pudding at White House state dinners. In a bold act of solidarity with struggling Americans, Eleanor, along with nutritionists, championed humble, economical dishes, even if they raised eyebrows among dignitaries accustomed to fancier fare. The Roosevelt's White House became known for its unpretentious menus, though not all of Eleanor's culinary experiments were hits. Today, prune pudding survives as a quirky relic of 1930s ingenuity, a reminder that even in the darkest times, people found ways to make something sweet out of very little. And while it might not be a modern dessert staple, it stands as proof that necessity can turn even the humblest ingredient into a symbol of resilience. The next item on the list was quite popular during the Great Depression era because it could be grown even in unfavorable conditions. 7. Jerusalem artichoke. During the Great Depression, many Americans struggled with food scarcity and economic hardship. Families searched for affordable, nutritious crops that could be grown easily, leading to a brief resurgence in the popularity of the Jerusalem artichoke, a hardy, tuber-producing plant. Unlike traditional crops, Jerusalem artichokes, also called sunchokes, thrived in poor soil and required little maintenance, making them ideal for struggling farmers. A single plant could produce numerous tubers, providing a reliable food source. Rich in inulin, a prebiotic fiber, iron, and potassium, they offered sustenance when other foods were scarce. Families had to get creative with Jerusalem artichokes, sunchokes, to make them more palatable. Since they were cheap, abundant, and easy to grow, people use them in various ways, though their strong, nutty flavor and tendency to cause gas due to their high I. 8. Parsnip. Parsnips quietly became one of the era's most vital survival foods, an unsung hero of the root cellar. While flashier vegetables failed in poor soil or succumbed to frost, these pale, carrot-shaped roots thrived against all odds, offering both sustenance and a touch of sweetness when both were desperately needed. What made parsnips extraordinary was their dual resilience. They could withstand freezing temperatures in the field, often becoming sweeter after a frost, and last for months in cold storage, providing nourishment through harsh winters when other supplies ran low. Packed with fiber, vitamin C, and potassium, they helped stave off scurvy and malnutrition, a lifeline disguised as a humble vegetable. Depression-era cooks got creative with them too. Their natural sweetness, more pronounced than turnips or rutabagas, made them versatile. Mashed as a potato substitute, roasted for depth of flavor, or even boiled and pureed into mock applesauce when fruit was unaffordable. Some families caramelized them with precious bits of fat or honey, turning a simple root into a rare treat during bitter times. Today, parsnips are often overlooked like the next item on the list, but their Depression-era legacy endures, a testament to how ordinary foods can become extraordinary when survival depends on them. They remind us that sometimes the most unassuming ingredients are the ones that keep us going. 9. Turnips. Hardy, fast-growing, and versatile, they provided much-needed nutrition when money and food were scarce. Turnips thrived in poor soil, required little care, and matured quickly, some varieties in just 6 weeks. Both the root and the greens could be eaten, reducing waste. They could be kept in root cellars or even left in the ground during winter. Rich in vitamin C, fiber, and calcium, especially the greens, helping prevent malnutrition. Their mild flavor made them adaptable to many dishes, though they were often seen as a last resort food, just like the next item on the list. 10. Kohlrabi. Kohlrabi became an unlikely but vital crop for struggling families. This fast-growing member of the cabbage family thrived where other vegetables failed, in poor soil, with little care, and through variable weather conditions. Both the bulbous stem and the leaves were edible, making it a practical no-waste crop. The crisp, mildly sweet stems could be eaten raw like an apple, sliced into salads, or cooked like turnips. The nutritious leaves were prepared like collard greens, providing valuable vitamins when fresh produce was scarce. What made kohlrabi particularly valuable was its quick maturity. It could be harvested in under 2 months, offering hungry families a much-needed food source while they waited for slower-growing crops to mature. Like many Depression-era foods, kohlrabi's versatility and reliability made it a quiet hero of kitchen gardens across America. The same can be said about the next item on the list. 11 beets. During the Great Depression, beets became an essential crop for families struggling to put food on the table. These root vegetables grew reliably even in poor soil and cold climates, producing high yields when other crops failed. What made beets particularly valuable was their incredible versatility. They could be stored fresh in root cellars for months, pickled for long-term preservation, or even used as a natural sweetener when sugar was too expensive. Beyond their practical growing and storage benefits, beets packed serious nutritional value, being rich in iron to prevent anemia, folate for cell health, and fiber for digestion. Every part of the plant was edible, from the nutrient-dense roots to the leafy greens that could be cooked like spinach. Families relied on beets in countless ways, roasted as a sweet side dish, grated into salads, boiled for soups, or even fermented like sauerkraut. Their natural sweetness made them particularly prized, often standing in for scarce sugar in Depression-era recipes. Like many foods of the era, beets demonstrated how necessity bred creativity in the kitchen, transforming a humble vegetable into a dietary cornerstone. The next item on the list was a staple vegetable during the Depression era. 12. Hubbard squash. Hubbard squash became a vital food source for struggling families across America during the Depression era. This large, hard-shelled winter squash was prized for its exceptional keeping qualities, often lasting 6 months or more when stored in a cool cellar. A single Hubbard squash could weigh between 15 to 40 pounds, providing substantial meals for a family over several weeks. Its thick, sweet flesh is packed with vitamin A to prevent deficiency-related illnesses, fiber for digestion, and complex carbohydrates for sustained energy. The squash's natural sweetness made it particularly valuable when sugar was expensive or rationed, serving as the base for pies, puddings, and other desserts. Even the seeds were utilized, roasted as snacks or pressed for their oil. Hubbard squash's ability to thrive in poor soil with minimal care, combined with its impressive nutritional profile and long shelf life, made it one of the most reliable survival crops during those difficult years. Families would bake, boil, mash, and puree the versatile squash, stretching it into soups, breads, and even coffee substitutes when other foods were scarce. Like many Depression-era foods, Hubbard squash demonstrated how necessity drove innovation in the kitchen, transforming a simple garden vegetable into a dietary cornerstone that helped many survive lean winters. If you were not eating Hubbard squash, then you'd be on a diet of peas. 13. Cowpea. When drought and economic devastation left fields barren and meat unaffordable, cowpeas, known as field peas or southern peas, emerged as a critical lifeline for struggling families, particularly across the impoverished rural South. These resilient legumes refused to surrender where other crops failed, thriving in parched, nutrient-starved sandy soils that would doom most plants. More than mere survival food, cowpeas were nutritional lifelines packed with protein rivaling meat, fiber for digestion, and iron to combat anemia, making them indispensable for malnourished families. Cooks stretched them into hearty soups, smoky stews, and crispy-edged hoe cakes, often seasoned with a precious scrap of salt pork or a swipe of bacon grease for richness. Their true genius lay in longevity. Dried cowpeas could last for years in burlap sacks or jars, outlasting even the harshest winters. For sharecroppers and subsistence farmers, cowpeas weren't just food. They were a lesson in resilience, proving that even in the cruelest conditions, life and hope could take root. Today, they linger on Southern tables as a quiet tribute to ingenuity born of hunger. The next item on the list was used as a substitute for sugar during the Depression era. 14. Sorghum syrup. When sugar was either too expensive or rationed, resourceful families turned to sorghum syrup, a thick, molasses-like sweetener made from sorghum cane. Unlike sugar, which required fertile soil and stable weather, sorghum thrived in poor, drought-stricken fields, making it a lifeline for struggling farmers, particularly in the South and Midwest. Many families grew and processed their own sorghum, boiling the cane juice in open kettles until it thickened into rich, dark syrup. Unlike refined sugar, which offered empty calories, sorghum was surprisingly nutritious, packed with iron, calcium, and potassium, and it never spoiled, lasting sitting for years in the pantry. It sweetened everything from biscuits and cornbread to baked beans and coffee, and some even used it as a folk remedy for coughs and sore throats. For families scraping by, sorghum syrup wasn't just a substitute, it was a symbol of resilience, proving that even in the hardest times, people could still find ways to nourish themselves. The next item was a meal that used something unconventional to make bread since flour was expensive and rationed. 15. Acorn bread. When flour prices soared and wheat became unaffordable for many families, resourceful homemakers turned to an ancient solution: acorn bread. This hearty, nutty-flavored staple, made from the abundant nuts of oak trees, became a crucial survival food, especially in rural areas where foraging provided free sustenance. Acorns, though bitter in their natural state, could be transformed into nutritious flour through a labor-intensive but worthwhile process. Families would first gather the nuts, shell them, then leach out the bitter tannins by boiling them in multiple changes of water or soaking them in cloth sacks submerged in running streams for days. Some even buried the acorn meal in wet sand near creeks, letting the groundwater naturally purify them. Once leached, the softened acorns were dried in the sun or a low oven before being ground into fine meal, using a mortar and pestle or a hand-cranked mill. The resulting acorn flour was rich in healthy fats, protein, and complex carbohydrates, essential nutrients when meat and wheat were scarce. Mixed with a little salt or ash as a primitive leavening agent, it was baked into dense, slightly sweet loaves that kept families fed through lean winters. While not as light as wheat bread, acorn bread was filling, nutritious, and most importantly, free. This Depression-era practice wasn't new. It echoed Native American and early settler traditions of using wild nuts as flour substitutes. But in the 1930s, it became a necessity once again, proving that sometimes survival meant returning to forgotten knowledge. The next item on the list was a versatile plant that was even for shelter: 16 cattail roots. During the harsh years of the Great Depression, when crops withered and grocery money vanished, struggling families relied on wild foods like cattail roots to survive. Thriving in marshes and wetlands, cattails were a versatile and calorie-rich staple, earning nicknames like swamp potato and nature's supermarket for their many uses. The starchy roots could be dried and ground into flour, while the young shoots were eaten like vegetables, and the pollen added protein to bread. Even the fibrous leaves were woven into mats and baskets. For desperate families with nowhere else to turn, this humble plant became a vital source of food, medicine, and even shelter, proving just how resourceful people had to be to endure those difficult times. The next item doesn't require you to plant them, but you do have to be skilled in foraging. 17 wild berries. During the Great Depression, wild berries became an essential source of nourishment and income for struggling families across America. When money was tight and crops failed, blackberries, raspberries, elderberries, and other wild fruits growing along roadsides and in forests provided free, nutrient-rich food that required no cultivation. Families would spend summer days gathering buckets of berries, which they ate fresh when possible or preserved through various methods to last through winter. The berries' high vitamin C content helped prevent scurvy, while their natural sugars provided much-needed calories and a rare sweet treat when store-bought sugar was unaffordable. Beyond personal consumption, wild berries became an important bartering commodity. Women would turn their harvests into jams, jellies, and preserves that could be traded for other necessities like flour or salt. Some families even managed to sell their homemade berry products for small amounts of cash when opportunities arose. Elderberries found particular use in homemade medicines, with their syrup being a common remedy for colds and flu when professional medical care was inaccessible. The simple act of berry picking also provided psychological relief during difficult times, offering families a chance to work together outdoors and maintain some sense of normalcy and self-sufficiency when so much else felt beyond their control. This reliance on wild berries during the 30s represented both a return to traditional food gathering practices and an adaptation to extraordinary economic circumstances. While berry foraging had always been part of rural life, the Depression years saw it become a critical survival strategy for people of all backgrounds, from Appalachian homesteaders to urban dwellers who ventured into nearby countryside. The humble wild berry, often overlooked in better times, became a symbol of resilience and resourcefulness during one of America's most challenging periods. The next item on the list was also foraged, not grown like the wild berries. 18. Purslane. During the Great Depression, when hunger loomed over countless American households, an unassuming weed called purslane quietly became a lifeline for struggling families. Often dismissed as a garden nuisance today, this resilient plant grew abundantly in the most unlikely places, pushing through sidewalk cracks, thriving in abandoned lots, and flourishing in drought-stricken fields where other crops had failed. Its very existence was a testament to nature's providence during humanity's darkest economic hour. What made purslane remarkable wasn't just its ubiquity, but its extraordinary nutritional value. The succulent leaves offered one of the richest plant-based sources of omega-3 fatty acids, a vital nutrient typically found in expensive fish that most families could no longer afford. It was also packed with vitamin A to prevent blindness, vitamin C to ward off scurvy, and iron to combat the anemia that plagued malnourished children. All these benefits came without a price tag. Purslane asked only that people recognize its value. Families would gather the plant by the basketful, incorporating it into their meager diets in creative ways. The slightly tangy, crunchy leaves added texture and nutrition to thin soups and potato dishes. Some cooked it like spinach, while others ate it raw in salads with whatever other foraged greens they could find. In the South, purslane often found its way into pots of beans, stretching precious protein sources while adding its own nutritional boost. Even the stems were used, pickled when vinegar could be spared, or added to fermentation crocks as a wild alternative to cabbage and sauerkraut. The story of Depression-era purslane consumption represents more than just historical trivia. It stands as a powerful reminder of human resilience and nature's often overlooked bounty. In our modern era of food waste and processed nutrition, this humble weed's legacy challenges us to reconsider what we value and disregard in our own backyards. As nutrition scientists now rediscover purslane's benefits, labeling it a superfood, we might do well to remember that our grandparents and great-grandparents knew its worth long before it appeared in health food stores. The next item is now seen as a weed, but was a lifeline for families during the Depression era. 19. Ramps, wild leeks, became a lifeline for Appalachian families during the Great Depression. These hardy wild onions thrived untended in mountain forests, providing free, nutrient-packed food when crops failed. Their strong garlic onion flavor and impressive shelf life made them invaluable. Families dried, pickled, or stored them in root cellars to last through winter. Rich in vitamins A and C, ramps helped combat malnutrition while adding bold flavor to meager meals. Beyond sustenance, ramp foraging became a cherished tradition, with secret gathering spots passed down through generations. Even their pungent odor proved useful, masking the taste of less palatable survival foods. Today, these wild leeks remain an Appalachian delicacy, a tasty reminder of nature's resilience and human ingenuity during hard times. The next item was a versatile plant that was used to make life jackets during World War II. 20 milkweed pods. Milkweed transformed from roadside weed to survival food during the Depression era when prepared properly. Families harvested young shoots, leaves, and pods, boiling them repeatedly to remove bitterness and toxins. The processed plant became surprisingly versatile. Shoots replaced asparagus, leaves stood in for spinach, and immature pods thickened soups like okra. Some even pickled the buds. Beyond nutrition, milkweed's silky fibers were later used in World War II life jackets. This unassuming plant epitomized Depression-era ingenuity, proving how necessity could turn even weeds into sustenance. Though no longer eaten today, milkweed remains a powerful symbol of resilience in hard times. The next item on the list was hunted for meat when it became too expensive to buy livestock from the butcher. 21. Fried squirrel. Next up is squirrel meat, which became an essential, although stigmatized, protein source for struggling rural families. With livestock unaffordable and wild game scarce, these ubiquitous rodents kept hunger at bay. A single squirrel could feed a family when stretched into stews or smothered with gravy over biscuits. Though mocked as tree rat or poverty chicken by those who could afford better, squirrel was surprisingly nutritious and also leaner than pork, rich in protein and iron. Some Depression-era cookbooks even included recipes for squirrel dumplings and pies. The stigma lingered for generations, but today, squirrel has been reclaimed as a sustainable wild game, with modern chefs honoring its place in Appalachian and Southern foodways. The next item on the list is a belly-filling snack, although hard to chew. 22. Hardtack. When flour was expensive and fresh bread a luxury, many families turned to hardtack, a rock-hard, shelf-stable cracker made from just flour, water, and salt. Originally a Civil War ration, this survival food made a grim comeback in the 30s as hunger spread. It requires only 3 ingredients, with no yeast, fat, or sweeteners. It could last decades if kept dry, no mold or pests. It provided empty carbs to stave off hunger pangs. To make this, you need flour, water, and salt. Start by mixing the ingredients together into a stiff dough, cut them into squares, and poking holes in it with a toothpick. Bake at 250 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 hours or until bone dry, and store in a cool, dry place. The next item on the list was popular during the 30s and was used as an alternative when the normal ingredient to make a pie wasn't available. 23. Vinegar pie. Alright, This simple dessert used pantry staples: vinegar for tang, scant sugar or molasses for sweetness, and flour or corn flour as thickener, all baked in a basic lard crust. The magic came in baking. The harsh vinegar mellowed into a lemon-like flavor, while the texture resembled custard. Some added spices or sour milk for variety. More than just food, it symbolized Depression-era resilience, transforming near nothing into something satisfying. Today, it survives as a historical curiosity, occasionally recreated to honor the ingenuity of cooks who turned scarcity into modest comfort. The next item was an alternative to meat when livestock became scarce and unaffordable: 24 bean loaf. During the Great Depression, bean loaf became the ultimate meatless alternative when beef was unaffordable. Resourceful cooks mashed pinto or navy beans with stale breadcrumbs, garden vegetables, and egg substitutes like potato water, forming a hearty loaf. Sometimes topped with a ketchup molasses glaze, it mimicked meatloaf's comfort at a fraction of the cost. Packed with protein and fiber, it kept families full while stretching scant ingredients. Though born of necessity, bean loaf showcased Depression-era ingenuity, turning simple staples into satisfying meals. Today, it survives in vegetarian cooking as a testament to culinary creativity during hard times. The next item was also used as an alternative to meat. 25. Egg drop soup. During the Great Depression, when meat was scarce and eggs were a precious commodity, egg drop soup became a clever way for families, especially in urban immigrant communities, to stretch a single egg into a filling meal.
What's up, everyone? Today we're going to learn how to make egg flour soup from scratch, also known as egg drop soup. My dad's deliciously simple egg flour soup recipe only takes about 10 to 15 minutes to make.
This simple, warming dish required almost nothing but water, an egg, and ingenuity. A single egg could thicken an entire pot of broth. What began as a desperation dish endured as a classic, proof that hunger breeds creativity. Today's egg drop soup is richer, but its Depression-era roots remind us how a little can become enough with clever cooking. When fresh apples were a luxury, desperate homemakers invented mock apple pie, a surreal but beloved dessert made from soda crackers, sugar, and spices. 26. Mock apple pie. So convincing it fooled many, this pie became a symbol of both hardship and culinary ingenuity. To make this meal, crush crackers until they become soft and chewy with an apple-like texture when cooked. Add lemon juice and sugar to create the tart sweetness of apples, then add cinnamon and nutmeg for flavor. Prepare the crust, then bake. When baked, the crackers absorbed the sugary syrup, turning translucent and slightly fibrous, uncannily like sliced apples. The acidity from lemon juice or vinegar completed the illusion. The mock apple pie may not be as popular as it was during the Depression era, but it was a beloved dish that filled the bellies of families and provided them with nutrients, and the same can be said about the next dish on the list. 27. Liver and onion. During the Great Depression, when steak was a distant dream and even cheap cuts of meat were hard to afford, liver and onions became a divisive but vital source of nutrition. Packed with iron and protein, this dish was cheap, filling, and widely available, but its strong flavor made it unforgettable, for better or worse. It was very cheap because butchers sold it for pennies or gave it away. To make this, soak the liver in milk or vinegar water to tame the bitterness. Fry sliced onions in bacon fat until golden, then dredge liver in flour. Fry in the same pan until browned but still pink inside, and finally deglaze the pan with water and thicken into gravy. Serve over toast or boiled potatoes. The next item on the list was used to make a soup that warmed the bellies of families during the Depression era. 28. Nettle soup. During the Depression, hungry families gathered stinging nettles despite their painful prickles because these wild greens grew freely and packed more nutrition than store-bought vegetables. After boiling away the sting, the tender leaves became the base for hearty, filling soups stretched with whatever else was available: a few potatoes, wild onions, or a splash of milk if they were lucky. Some added dandelion greens or rendered bacon fat for extra flavor when possible. Beyond soups, nettles were dried for tea to treat ailments when medicine was scarce. What was once a last resort food is now prized by chefs, but older generations remember when these stubborn weeds kept families alive. The next item on the list was popular because it was a cheap dessert. 29. Black locust blossom fritters. During the lean years of the Great Depression, resourceful cooks found sweetness in unexpected places like the fragrant white clusters of black locust blossoms. When sugar was scarce, these delicate flowers became the base for locust blossom fritters, a seasonal delicacy that required no money, just knowledge and effort. Families would gather the blossoms in spring, carefully avoiding the toxic bark and leaves. A simple batter of precious flour, water or vinegar, and a pinch of salt transformed them into crispy, golden fritters when fried in rendered lard. The flour's natural honey-like flavor made them a rare sweet treat. Some compared them to funnel cakes or beignets. Beyond their taste, locust fritters represented adaptability, proof that even in hardship, nature offered fleeting moments of joy. Today, they're a forgotten Depression-era hack, though modern foragers still revive the recipe as a nod to resilience. The next item on the list was used as an alternative to milk when dairy from livestock were expansive. 30. Hickory nut milk. Let's round things up with hickory nut milk. Dairy was scarce and store-bought milk a luxury. Rural families turned to hickory nuts to make a rich, creamy milk that provided calories, fat, and a touch of sweetness, all from wild trees. They are high in calories and provided crucial energy during lean times. This was made by cracking the nut first, then pounding it with water in a mortar or a hand mill, then simmering it with more water for about 20 minutes, and then straining it with milk. It can be used as a flour stretcher and a coffee lightener. As we close this chapter on the resourceful recipes of the Great Depression, let's honor the memories of those who lived through it. If your grandparents or great-grandparents survived this era, ask them to share their stories of struggle and resilience. And if you've enjoyed this culinary journey through history, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more fascinating food history videos. Thanks for joining me on this trip down memory lane.